with Exhibit C. Thank you, everybody, and we apologize for being slow getting back. We are at Exhibit C, Commercial Pelagic Species Fisheries, and we were going to have Greg Kwiatkowski, but it looks like we have Michael Harrington instead. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Chair Wall and Vice Chair Hatfield-Hyde. For the record, I'm Mike Harrington, the Fish Division Administrator, and you are still going to get Greg. Okay. With a barren table up here, I just wanted to come up here and introduce him. He was not able to make it today. We figured we'd give him a freebie with a typically historically short presentation and a very long drive. So I'm going to hand it off to Greg for the Coastal Pelagic Species Pacific Sardine, and take it away.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you very much, Mike, Chair Wall, Vice Chair Hatfield-Hyde, Director Colbert, and members of the Commission. My name is Gregory Kwiatkowski. I am with the Marine Resources Program of Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, and I'm going to talk a little bit about Pacific sardine and fishery regulations for it. So the issue today before you is to adopt the sardine fishery regulations and adopt the federal rules for Pacific sardine fisheries for the upcoming fishing year, which starts on July 1 and ends on 2025 and ends on June 30th, 2026. A little bit of background. Sardine populations fluctuate greatly. And what you're looking at here is a graph that was published back in 1992. And you can see that this is biomass in millions of metric tons of sardine. And, you know, this goes from the year, yes, 300 up to just before 2000. And you can see that the population goes up and down and up and down. And it's thought to be generally driven by ocean conditions because there certainly were no commercial fisheries for Pacific sardine for most of this time period. And despite yet about 100 years of research, we don't really have a mechanistic understanding. But essentially, what they did is they took deposits from the anoxic Santa Barbara Basin and looked at the scales that were in there and came up and back calculated from the quantity of scales and the depth of where they were located, what the biomass was back in the day. And so with that, I'll give you a little background on the biology of these critters. They get to be about 12 to 15 inches long. They can live as long as 13 years, but it's rare that we see many of them over 5 or 6 years of age. They start reproducing at 1 or 2 years old. They're plankton feeders. They eat not only zooplankton, but also the phytoplankton. And the northern stock, which is the stock that is managed in U.S. waters, ranges from just south of the border with Mexico down into Baja, and they can go up as far as Southeast Alaska, and they're from really close to shore out to about 300 miles offshore. And they do and have been known to make a seasonal migration northward in the summer months to feed and back southward in the winter months. A little bit about the science and federal management. Basically, every year they do a large survey with these big NOAA ships to get an idea of the abundance and distribution of Pacific sardines. And in recent years, this has been a collaborative work with fishing vessels, commercial fishing vessels. The Lisa Marie and the Long Beach Carnage have both participated in this work. And so the stock is then assessed on a regular basis. And then these scientific surveys are the basis for that stock assessment. And they produce this stock assessment for the entire coast. A little bit about the more recent population trend. This is a graph from the 2025 update assessment for Pacific sardine, and it shows the population estimates from both the last benchmark assessment in 2024 and the update assessment in 2025. And you see the 24 benchmark assessment is in red, and then the update assessment, which adds new data to that, is in the blue or greenish blue color. You can see the last few dots there are actually projections. And the way that sardine is managed is that they actually project out what the biomass will be for the next fishing year. So a little bit about the Pacific Fishery Management Council. There are 14 voting members and includes members of the fishing industry, members from the conservation community, members from state agencies, and federal folks as well. There are a number of advisory bodies. I am on the Coastal Pelagic Species Management Team, one of the advisory bodies. There's also a Coastal Pelagic Species Advisory Subpanel, which is made up of industry folks and also conservation representative. They take public comment, and they adopted the federal harvest specifications and management measures for Pacific sardine at their April 2025 meeting. The council is required to set a number of different specifications by the Magnuson-Stevens Act. That includes the overfishing limit, the acceptable biological catch, an annual catch limit, and also they can set an annual catch target. So these are the federal regulations that are going to go into place. Now, the harvest control rules for Pacific sardine that are in the CPS fishery management plan say that there are no directed fishery when the biomass is less than 150,000 metric tons. So the type of the fishing that you're seeing in this picture will not be allowed. And that is a continuation of the closure that has occurred since 2015. So the council decisions, it does allow for some limited harvest of Pacific sardine for live bait, for minor directed fisheries, and for incidental catch in other fisheries. As you heard with many of the other talks today, or at least certainly the one on salmon, you know, you got to think about the economics, and certainly live bait is a very economically important fishery, especially down in Southern California. And you don't want to shut down other fisheries that are healthy, and so there, you know, you allow some level of incidental catch in those fisheries. So based on the stock biomass estimate of 30,158 metric tons, they set the following numbers that you can see in that table. I'm not going to read them to you for the overfishing limit, the acceptable biological catch, the annual catch limit, which is the total that can be caught in the year, and also an annual catch target, which actually triggers some of the management measures that I'm going to show you next. These are the accountability measures adopted that, and they included three different things. There's an incidental landing limit in coastal pelagic species fisheries of 20% sardine. If the annual catch target of 2,100 metric tons is attained, there's a per trip limit of 1 metric ton of Pacific sardine that applies to all coastal pelagic species fisheries. And then Sardine are also caught in some of the non-CPS fisheries, such as the hake fishery, and there's an incidental landing allowance of 2 metric tons per landing until that annual catch limit is reached. And with that, I would be happy to take any questions that you have. Thank you.
Greg, I don't see other questions yet. One quick question that I have is, these are absolutely critical to the marine food chain. Could you just say real quickly what it means when when you say in your report, the Pacific Fisheries Management Council recognizes the value of sardines as forage food in the marine food chain? Just a quick answer.
Yeah, very quickly. They are indeed a really important part of the ecosystem out there. They transfer, food from the plankton up to those higher trophic levels. So everything from whales and seabirds and groundfish, including Chinook and salmon, including the Chinook salmon that you heard about earlier, all eat Pacific sardine, among a variety of other things, and anchovy being another big one, and herring are another example of types of forage fish.
Thank you. Go ahead.
So, Madam Chair, I move to adopt the draft rules for the 2025 I move to adopt the federal regulations by reference as shown in attachment 3 for the Pacific sardine fisheries for 25-26.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to adopt the federal regulations by reference as shown in attachment 3 for Pacific sardine fisheries for 25-26. Let's do a voice vote. King?
Yes.
Spellbrink.
Yes.
Hatfield Hyde.
Yes.
Lobhart.
Yes.
Wall.
Yes. Passes.
Hall DeFreeze, actually.
Oh, sorry.
Yes. Commissioners, if you want to just recap the vote, I didn't mean to interrupt that. I'm sorry.
No, it's
Madam
fine.
Chair. Well, I just wanted to thank Greg for his work on this, and also let you know that this is his last presentation, because Greg is actually going to be retiring officially July 1st. And so just want to thank him for his more than 16 years of service to the agency, and just all of the great work that he's done for Oregon and as part of our marine program.
Wow. Thank you, Greg. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the recognition.
And with that, we will go to, thank you, Director. Exhibit D, importation, possession, confinement, transportation, and sale of non-native wildlife Division 56 rule amendments. And it looks like we have Sarah and Keith. So
Well, you just have me for a moment, and then Bernadette
Okay.
will be up here.
Go ahead.
Okay, great. Chair Wall, Vice Chair Hatfield Hyde. Thanks. This is Sarah Reif again, Acting Deputy Director. And hopefully we can get the slides changed over. I'm sure Caleb's working on that right now. That gives me a little bit of time to give me just 1 second.
Greg, can you please unshare your screen?
Yes.
Thank you, Greg. Okay, so this agenda item is related to the Division 56 rulemaking. This is around the importation, possession, confinement, transportation, and sale of non-native wildlife and this is the rule amendment that you're considering. And I just I have communicated this to you recently via email, but also just wanted to walk you and our public through this new process that we're trying on for size. So for this rulemaking, we're going to be testing out a new approach. This has been recommended to us by the Governor's Natural Resource Office. This new process will help create more time between the close of public comment and commission action. This is different because our commission has typically closed its public comment the day that it takes action. We chose to do it on the Division 56 rules because these are relatively low heat. It's a good one to kind of experiment with. Although Keith, I mean, it's exciting, but it's fun. It's great. So at today's meeting, you will hear a staff presentation from Keith DeHart and Bernadette Graham-Hudson, and then you will hold a public rulemaking hearing. You'll have the opportunity to discuss what you heard, but you will not be making a motion for decision today. The public comment will remain open for a few more days beyond this meeting. It'll close on June 20th. And then at your August 15th meeting, staff will summarize public comments received and the department's response to those comments. You'll have the opportunity for further discussion, and then you'll consider a motion on the proposed rule revisions at that meeting. Like I said, we're using the Division 56 rulemaking as a pilot test of a new process at the encouragement of the governor's office. So we'll see how this goes. I'm sure we'll learn and potentially adapt process to improve it over time. And unless there are questions on that component of it, I'll pass it over to Bernadette and Keith. Very good.
Don't see any.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So good afternoon, Chair Wall, Vice Chair Hatfield-Hyde, members of the Commission, Director Colbert. I'm Bernadette Graham-Hudson. I'm the Wildlife Division Administrator with the department. And as Sarah mentioned, this is the first part of our two-part rulemaking pilot process. And I wanted to take a minute to introduce Keith DeHart. He's our Invasive Species and Wildlife Integrity Coordinator, which is a long title, as is the this rule set title that you're considering. But I'll refer to this, and I think he will too, as our wildlife integrity rules, just in trying to protect our native species. But Keith oversees our aquatic invasive species program, which includes our watercraft inspection stations that you've heard a little bit about from Sean this morning with all the legislation that is has been passed around those. So it's a pretty complex program, and so Keith does a great job kind of keeping the wheels on the bus there. But he also coordinates our broader efforts to protect our native species from invasive species. And so that's really the intent of this rule set. And so with that, I will turn it over to Keith to walk you through what we're proposing today.
Thank you, Bernadette. Thanks for that introduction. Chair Wall, Vice Chair Hatfield-Hyde, Director Colbert, members of the Commission. My name is Keith DeHart. I am the Invasive Species and Wildlife Integrity Coordinator for ODFW. Thank you for your work. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. And what a wonderful day to be in Pendleton. It's cool. So it's cooler than it was last week. So in an effort at getting out of here before the Beaver game, I'm going to try and go through this pretty quickly, but feel free to ask questions at the end. You've heard already that we are proposing amendments to Division 56 rules. They regulate the possession and transportation, importation, confinement of non-native species in Oregon. This is a broad rule set. It covers a lot of species. And that being said, what is being proposed today and through this rulemaking is it's not exhaustive. It's not an exhaustive review of Division 56. The initial reason for opening this rule set is to make permanent the rules around golden mussels that you've already heard about previously, and I will give a little bit of background again about that today. But then we will also address a few other issues that have come up in the past decade since this rule set was last opened and modified in a significant way. These edits will include adjusting language around non-native abalone, mute swan, green crab, and then cleaning up some grammar and other taxonomy related changes. So with that being said, I pushed a button. I'm going to see if it goes. Push a button again. There we go. All right. Division 56 purpose is to protect Oregon's native wildlife. That's the primary purpose of this rule set. These rules actually allow for the ownership of non-native wildlife in Oregon to the extent that they do not pose a significant risk to native wildlife and their habitats. Effectively, we are regulating human activity around non-native wildlife in Oregon with the Division 56 rules. These rules break species down into 4 primary categories. First is the prohibited list, which is non-native wildlife that may not be imported, possessed, sold, purchased, or exchanged or transported within the state without authorization and an extensive process with the department. This is the default list. So if there is nothing or if the species is not listed in the regulations and is not native to Oregon, that's where it falls by default already in these rules. The next list is the non-controlled list. These are non-native species that have been determined to not pose a significant threat to native wildlife or their habitats in Oregon. Thus, when their possession or transportation is occurring in the state, people do not require an authorization or communication with the department. Next is the controlled list, which are potentially harmful non-native species that have been determined that sufficient controls can be established around them and their possession, transport, confinement, and importation that can to prevent harm to non-native species or to our native wildlife and habitats. And then finally, there is an exempt list that is generally animals that are considered domestic or livestock that are controlled by ODA that we will not be addressing here, but I want you to make sure you know that.
So
yes, sir.
What are those zebras? Zebra mussels or what in the picture?
What are those? Those are zebra mussels. Yes,
okay.
sir.
Thank you. Now I can know it.
Okay. The way that species are classified into these, the 3 categories, not exempt, but the other 3 categories is the risk factors around disease transmission, hybridization with native species, risk around competition for food or habitat, or the non-native species' ability to survive. And there's also risk factors around the ability to even control an animal or a population if they were to escape, and the feasibility of control of the species. So with that, diving into the changes. Right again. There we go. Next, let's see. We're going to do one more time. All right, diving into the changes, the golden mussel. This is a proposed species to be on the prohibited list, both dead and alive. That's a fairly unique thing. The only other species in the prohibited list that has that is the quagga and the zebra mussel, these freshwater invasive mussels that we are highly concerned about their transmission into Oregon through watercraft, overland transport of watercraft and water infrastructure. The golden mussel was first detected in the United States, and it's actually a first of its kind in North America this last summer in the Sacramento River Delta. Since that time, California has been doing extensive work trying to figure out where they're at and how far they've spread, and we just keep finding more and more of them across California. Most recently, one of my counterparts that works in watercraft inspection in Lake Tahoe area, they discovered one trying to come into Lake Tahoe at a watercraft inspection station. They were able to actually stop the boat from being launched. So they're a great concern, and they're spreading. To be clear, these have not been detected in Oregon yet, and we are doing our best at watercraft inspection stations to keep them out. But their transport with overland via watercraft transport and infrastructure is a legitimate threat to Oregon's water bodies. This would make permanent the rule that's already been established. And the reason for the classification of both dead and an alive, which is unique, as I said, is that it would provide watercraft inspectors at our stations to not have to determine viability of a golden mussel that is attached to the hull of a boat before ordering a decontamination of the boat. It would allow us to go, this is a risky watercraft and we need to do a decontamination of the watercraft, even if it is dead. And so that's how seriously we want to take this species in Oregon. Additionally, dead mussel shells, if they were to enter waterways in Oregon, could interfere with our monitoring efforts, which are done through eDNA sampling, which is not able to currently determine whether an animal was dead or alive when it deposited the DNA into the water body. Next up is a staff recommendation that a non-native abalone be added to the prohibited list. As you're probably aware, Oregon's native abalone fishery has been suspended since 2018 due to population declines. The threat of non-native abalone introduction could further exacerbate that decline through the introduction of two diseases, withering syndrome and abalone herpevirus, which are highly contagious and could be devastating if introduced into our native populations. Under the current rules, non-native abalone are considered a live food fish, and classifying them as prohibited would remove that distinction in our rules. By banning the importation of non-native, would also concur with similar rulings in California and Washington, and would help prevent Oregon from being an open state to its importation and thus becoming a shipping hub for live abalone destined for other states. A couple of other minor changes to the prohibited list is to expand to all species in the family of mystery snails and oyster drills, to just make clear our rules that the mystery snail and the oyster drills, which can cause harm to our native populations of aquatic animals, we want to expand that to include all, rather than just Japanese and Chinese mystery snails, and then that's similar for the oyster drill. Additionally, in our current rule set, sea turtles are listed as non-controlled in Division 56, and with their decline and their threatened and endangered status, it doesn't seem to align well that we call them non-controlled in the state, and so we're proposing moving them to prohibited based on the fact that they are threatened and endangered around the world. Moving on to the next classification, that's the end of the prohibited species additions, but moving on to non-controlled, which as a reminder means that they can be possessed in Oregon and transported without a permit or authorization from the department. First off is the brush-tailed batong. This is relatively uncommon in the pet trade, but in the past, staff have received inquiries from members of the public desiring to possess this animal. It poses low risk to native wildlife, and staff propose adding them to the non-controlled list. Additionally, there's a family of geckos. Currently, geckos are non-controlled in Division 56, and there's another family of geckos that we're proposing adding to that, the eyelid gecko. I'm not going to try and butcher the scientific name because I'm not a gecko biologist. But they are currently not listed in our rules and thus are prohibited, though they do not pose a significant threat to our wildlife or habitats. And then finally, with regard to pythons and boas, they are currently a non-controlled species, and due to a taxonomic change that occurred splitting off a single species called the sunbeam snake that's native to Mexico. That occurred in the last 10 years. That species is now considered prohibited by technicality in our rules, and we are proposing adding that single species in that one family to the non-controlled list. And finally, moving on to controlled changes. These are the species that we can that we have determined pose a threat to native wildlife and their habitats, but certain measures can be put in place to allow for their possession. Currently, the mute swan is on our controlled list, and the proposed change that we are making here is to remove the requirement that all males be neutered if they're in the possession of an individual, because veterinarians refuse to do that surgery due to the high risk and low survival rate of that animal. And so it makes that rule basically unattainable. And so in lieu of that, we recommend adding the rule to destroy nests so that breeding does not occur in captivity. Also, this rule or this amendment would add the rule that for the possession of mute swans, they must be authorized by the department, and a letter of authorization must be given by the department. And finally, the last change is, again, to the controlled list regarding green crab, an invasive species off the Oregon coast. Staff recommend making changes to their status by removing the restriction of a commercial fishery, as well as removing the restriction to return them to the water after capture. And the reason for that final one is because we currently manage them in our recreational fisheries, and there is a catch-22 in our rules, where if we say you can keep 35 green crab, but you can't return them to the water. And so what happens when you catch the 36th? You're not allowed to return it to the water, and you're also breaking the rule, the harvest limit. And so we're proposing just removing that rule and allowing our recreational fishery harvest management guidelines to regulate green crab. And with that, that's the major proposed changes we have for Division 56 for you to consider. You don't have to make a decision today, which I hope is a thing that makes you smile. But I will acknowledge that there's a few other housekeeping changes, nomenclature, grammar, spelling, taxonomy that have been altered, but none of them alter the intent of the rule beyond that. So with that, I'd be happy to address any questions.
I don't see other questions. I have one quick one. Could you just mention the connection with the golden mussel and the impetus for this rule?
Okay.
Did you mention the impetus for this rule and the connection with the golden mussel?
Yeah.
Quickly.
So thank you for the question. Yeah, the golden mussel is it's a highly invasive species of freshwater mussel that we are really concerned about, and the reason we want to have it in this rule, I mean, it's already prohibited, but the connection is to make it prohibited dead or alive, so that we can stop the spread of them into Oregon as best we can. We are doing our best efforts at our watercraft inspection station. There's a lot of legislation, as you've already heard, around invasive species, particularly the golden mussel was a poster child that got a lot of attention this season. And so we're taking it very seriously and want to keep them out of Oregon's waters and protect our infrastructure and beautiful fisheries. So,
Chair, well, I would just add that you guys did approve a temp rule earlier in the season to add those so that the watercraft inspection stations could have that backstop as they're doing their inspections this spring, and we definitely wanted to get into the permanent rule.
Good. And I just understood that that was sort of the impetus for picking this issue up at all. And I thought it was an interesting add. Yeah, thanks. I don't see other questions, so we'll see you again in August on this. Oh, wait a minute. We have one person to testify. Amanda Fox online.
Hi there. Thank you
She's
so
here?
much.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Wall and Vice Chair and members of the Commission. My name is Amanda Fox, and I serve as the Senior Research Executive for Animal Research Initiative. I've been listening all day, and I want to thank you for your careful consideration of sustaining Oregon's biological diversity. And although not on the original list of proposed changes to the prohibited species list, I'm here to provide a statement of support for adding live octopuses to Oregon's prohibited species list because of their unique adaptability and propensity to become invasive. I submitted a comprehensive report for your review, but I wanted to highlight a couple key points for your assessment. This immediate action is necessary to avoid preventable disasters that are currently unfolding in the United Kingdom. In England, shellfishers there are facing an unprecedented crisis caused by a recent invasion of supersized 6-foot Octopus vulgaris. These animals have figured out how to enter crab pots and lobster pots. They can squeeze into tiny holes, inject the crustaceans with venom, liquefy and eat them, leaving the empty shells for fishermen. They have completely decimated the local crab and lobster populations, devastating the catch and threatening the long-term survival of the fishery. This is not hypothetical for Oregon. Even if a small number of octopuses were introduced to our waters through aquaculture or transport accidents or private ownership, the impact on our Dungeness and pink shrimp fisheries would be irreparable and economically devastating. So to put it in perspective, an influx of even just 10,000 octopuses, each capable of eating 1 to 3 crustaceans or mollusks or salmon or other marine animals every day, could wipe out more than 1 million pounds of marine life in less than a month. So that level of predation would have catastrophic consequences for Oregon. All octopuses are carnivorous, cannibalistic, venomous, opportunistic, apex predators and possess an extremely high capability of escape and to establish themselves in non-native environments. They're widely regarded as the most intelligent invertebrates on the planet. They have vastly more gene expressions than we do. They're known to use tools, manipulate objects, hunt with other species, ride animals for transportation. And so they're uniquely suited to exploit weaknesses in containment systems. And aquariums around the world have repeatedly reported escapes by octopuses. The escapes have resulted in deaths of other animals, power outages, flooding, structural damage. And a study by the Seattle Aquarium found every species was likely to escape and found that Ovolaris was the most adept and inclined. And these facilities were highly regulated and run by professionals. So we can't afford to allow these mollusks to be casually owned or purposefully owned because the risk of biological disruption to Oregon's marine ecosystems is far too great. So prohibiting the possession and importation of live octopuses is a common sense, science-backed precaution that will protect our fisheries and ecosystems. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Amanda. And I don't see questions, so we appreciate your testimony. And we'll go back to any questions to staff. Anything you need to add to the octopus one? Don't have to, just if you wanted to.
We can take that under advisement, Chair Wall. We can take that under advisement and review it and get back to you in August.
Glad to hear about it in August. Thank you both very much. We'll go to item E and appeals for preference point reinstatement. Turn number 2, Ken. And congratulations on the budget.
Chair Wall, Vice Chair Hatfield-Hyde, Director Colbert, Commissioners, for the record, Ken Loffing, Chief Operating Officer for Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. Here to present to you 2 preference point reinstatement appeals. Now, these are scenarios where ODFW has denied requests for preference point reinstatement, and the requesters are appealing those denials. And then just before I start, I just want to set the stage and say that these are incredibly challenging for the department. They're not fun. Ultimately, our hope is for folks who draw controlled hunts, get to participate in those hunts and have a great time. when we receive these, and we really do review these requests with compassion and empathy, but also understand for fairness and consistency that we need to review these scenarios very strictly with rule. And so just wanted to set the stage there for these, and I'll provide a little more context for what happened in 2024. But just know that these are challenging for us to go through, and we really do feel for folks when they don't have a great time. But the rules are there for a variety of reasons, and we need to be consistent with those rules. So what are those rules? I almost forgot I had a presentation up there. I was just going to keep rolling. So what are those rules? So our preference point reinstatements are governed by Oregon Administrative Rule 635-060-0046. And apologize for reading here, but I am going to read off exactly what it says in rule. You have it in your packet, but it's important for the context of your decision making today. So the rule states that the director may reinstate the preference points of a person who the director determines did not or will not participate in a controlled hunt because of circumstances beyond the person's control or tragic personal circumstances. And for the purpose of this rule, circumstances beyond the person's control means any unforeseen circumstance that directly and reasonably results in a person's inability to participate in the hunt. This could include, but is not limited to, administrative or emergency closures of hunting units, extreme events, and other accidents or incidents. Circumstances beyond a person's control do not include complaints about the quality of the hunt, including, but not limited to, road closures, inclement weather, and work being conducted in the hunt area. And the second one is tragic personal circumstances, which means death or life-threatening injury or illness in the person's immediate family, or the person's own serious injury or illness, which results in the person's hospitalization or inability to participate in the hunt due to a physician's orders or recommendation. The rule also states that if the director decides that the person does not qualify for a reinstatement, the person may appeal that decision to the commission. The commission shall review the director's decision and will not take verbal testimony, and the commission's decision is final. Also want to talk a little bit about 2024. So preference point reinstatement in 2024. So we received 754 requests for preference point reinstatement in 2024. We approved 681 of those. So just on those notes, we receive a lot of these every year. That's a pretty average number. And we do review them. We review them against and evaluate them against that administrative rule. And if they meet the requirements of rule, we give them their points back. But also want to highlight here, 2024 is a tremendous fire year. So in addition to those, that kind of normal number of requests we receive, ODFW did process over 3,008 to be precise, 3,008 preference point reinstatements associated with wildfire. And so these were real-time decisions that the department made where upcoming hunt was going to be severely impacted by an ongoing wildfire. Department made the decision in some cases to offer preference point reinstatement in lieu of someone going hunting. In some cases, we gave that choice to the hunter, right? We sent out notification, said this upcoming hunt is impacted by fire. We were aware of that. We want to give you the choice. You can hunt or you can take a preference point reinstatement and try again next year. And 3,008 hunters accepted that offer across a variety of different hunts, species, units, that type of thing. So key points here is there was lots of wildfire-related impacts in 2024, not to every unit, and each hunt was reviewed with regards to the area burned, amount and distribution of accessible land, habitat and species distribution, road closures, length of hunting season, severity of burn, potential for hunter overcrowding, and potential impacts on the big game populations. With all of these factors in combination, the department offered preference point reinstatements for tag holders in certain hunts, but again, not all hunts in all locations. So complex, really tried to do our best, but it's a dynamic situation and pretty challenging. So let's tackle the first issue. First issue is preference point reinstatement request appeals for Thomas and Jesse Beck, who we'll refer to as applicants. So the applicant successfully drew a 400 series pronghorn antelope tag for the Sylvies unit number 2 with season dates 8/28 through 9/5. The applicants did submit a point reinstatement request to ODFW in late September. And per the request, the applicants did hunt for 4 days during hunt 472A2. But the reinstatement request noted tons of smoke, poor air quality, active fires in the area, and they chose to end their hunt early. The applicants requested reinstatement of preference points due to circumstances beyond their control. Due to the information received in the application, the department denied the request as we determined it did not meet the requirements of rule. And just a little more information about that specific hunt and hunter activity and preference point activity associated with that hunt. So hunt 47282 was impacted by wildfire in 2024. And ODFW, this was one of the hunts where ODFW gave the option for hunters to receive preference point reinstatements prior to the hunt starting if hunters chose not to hunt. The hunt was not canceled as wildfires did not impact the entire unit and there were reasonably accessible areas with big game to hunt during the hunt dates. And again, we wanted to provide the option for folks who wanted to go hunting to be able to do that. But 19 hunters did choose not to hunt and have their preference points reinstated. And then in review of our controlled hunt reporting in this unit, we had an estimated 24 hunters that did participate in the hunt and 14 successful of those being successful. So taking all that information into consideration is the department's conclusion that the applicants did participate in the hunt and that circumstances do not meet the definition of circumstances beyond their control and that the applicants are not eligible for point reinstatement per rule. Moving on to the second issue, Justin Harry, who we'll refer to as applicant, successfully drew a 100 series buck deer tag for the Murders Creek unit with season dates of October 5th through October 16th. The applicant did submit a preference point reinstatement, which we received on October 4th. And per the request, the applicant chose not to hunt in the hunt, citing concerns over fire activity, air quality, and animal populations. Again, referencing or requesting preference point reinstatement due to circumstances beyond their control. Again, based on the information received and what we knew to be going on with the hunt, the preference point reinstatement request and supporting, excuse me, I just repeated myself. It was determined that the applicant did not meet the requirements for preference point reinstatement and the application was denied and the applicant is appealing that determination. There we go. So preference point reinstatement and hunter activity for this hunt 146. So hunt 146 was also impacted by wildfire, but the wildfire did not impact the entire unit, and there were reasonably accessible areas to hunt big game during the hunt dates. This was not one of the units where ODFW offered a point reinstatement ahead of the hunt because we did feel there was adequate areas and areas to hunt. And based on controlled hunt reporting, I think supporting this notion, an estimated 828 hunters did participate in the hunt, with an estimated 428 of those being successful. So again, with all that information under consideration, and based on the information received in the applications, the department concludes that the applicant chose not to hunt due to concerns over the air quality and access, but that there were actually accessible areas available to hunt, and the circumstances provided do not meet the definition of circumstances beyond a person's control. So based on that, fairly quick presentation, but based on the information received and evaluation of each issue against rule, it is the staff's recommendation to deny the preference point reinstatement appeals. I'm happy to answer any questions.
I don't see any, but I think we are ready with the.
I've got a question. So could you go back to 472A2, that one? Or maybe I could just read it. Sure. Okay. So I just want to make the semantics clear. 19 hunters chose to not hunt and have their preference points reinstated. So I can interpret that two ways. They didn't appeal. Okay.
No, so Chair Wall, Commissioner Labhart, great question. I should have been more clear here. So this was one of the hunts where, hey, it's 2 weeks ahead of the hunt. We know there's an active fire. We know it's impacted. So the department proactively reached out to hunters and offered them the opportunity to not hunt in exchange for the preference points back.
And they chose that.
19 of those hunters chose that option. Thank you.
Got it. Is there a motion?
Motion.
I move to deny the appeal of Thomas D. Beck and Jesse T. Beck for pronghorn antelope preference point reinstatement and deny the appeal by Justin R. Harry for buck deer preference point reinstatement.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to deny the appeal by Thomas D. Beck and Jesse T. Beck for pronghorn antelope preference point reinstatement and deny the appeal by Justin R. Harry for buck deer preference point reinstatement. And I think we can do, let's do a voice vote. I think Commissioner Hatfield-Hyde is still here.
Spellbrink?
Yeah.
King?
Yes.
Hall DeFreeze?
Yes.
Labhart?
Yes.
Hatfield-Hyde?
Yes.
Wall?
Yes, motion carries unanimous, and we will move, thank you very much. We will move on to Exhibit F. And Bernadette's already here. 2025 auction and raffle tag allocation. Go ahead, Bernadette. I bet you're going to introduce a couple people.
Good afternoon again, Chair Wall, Vice Chair Hatfield-Hyde, members of the Commission, Director Colbert. I am really just here to introduce Travis Schultz and Dr. Don Whitaker to present this agenda item. And hopefully there'll be no technical issues and they can take it away.
Great. Go ahead. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Wall, Vice Chair Hatfield-Hyde, members of the Commission, Director Colbert. For the record, I am Travis Schultz, the Access and Habitat Coordinator. Before you today is the 2026 Big Game Auction and Raffle Tags. If you could advance the slide, please. All right, can you hear me now?
Can you advance it for him?
It's a thing
on
the table.
There we go. Okay. For each auction sold, for each auction tag that is sold, the host of the auction gets to keep 10% of the sale, and 90% goes to the supporting program. For deer and elk tags, that's the Access and Habitat program. And for bighorn sheep, Rocky Mountain goat, and pronghorn, that's the individual species accounts. This has provided almost $300,000 to the host organizations and $2.6 million for those programs during the biennium. Both of those numbers are all-time records. For sales, the raffles last year, so 2024's raffle sales were the highest on record ever. This year they were down by about 100,000. But that's still the second best year on record. Auction sales for deer and elk this year and bighorn sheep broke all records, and both of them did very well. Auction and raffle tags are a very important part of the funding for these programs. For the Access and Habitat program, for the first time this biennium, this will be the first biennium in which auction and raffle sales will exceed license revenue. Next slide, please. The A&H board, along with the Wildlife Division, recommend no changes to our big game raffle and big game auction tags, which you can see here. With that, I can answer any questions you may have.
Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, me again. So just a comment, the bighorn tag sold for $95,000 in 2016. 2025 is $480,000. So that's amazing. So I'm assuming, when I look at this, when I looked at it, I highlighted it because the auctions really pull in a large amount of money, and the raffle, was 2024 was 456, and then it dropped 200,000 in 25 to 220,000. So I know we could make a lot more money with the auctions, but is it the purpose of the raffle is people that don't go to events can just buy it online, and so they get that opportunity, even though it's $200,000 less in revenue. It gives that opportunity to a greater audience. Is that the thinking with the raffle?
Yes. Chair Wall, Commissioner Labhart. The raffle provides, it is also for generating funds for our programs, but it provides the ability that if you want to purchase $30,000 worth of tickets, you can do that. If you want to purchase a ticket for $4 for deer, you can do that. So it allows a wide variety of individuals entry into the raffle.
Okay, so, yeah. So the answer is yes. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Chair Wall, Commissioner Labhart, I would just say, I think it makes it more accessible to everybody rather than just folks who have $400,000 in their pocket.
Thank you for the report. I have two quick questions. One is a question and then a comment. The question is, do you have an idea of what the percentage is to research and management compared to access and habitat of where the money goes? And if not, I can get it from you later. I just am curious over time.
I can answer, so Don can answer for his programs and tell you, but for access and habitat, it'd just be the deer and elk funds. So for this year it was about $940,000 in auction and about $550 for raffle.
Okay. I may do a follow-up with you on that one if I could, but the comment I wanted to make is that somebody sent in comments and said that they were worried that we weren't going to get it because it came in late. We did get it, so I just want, the person is, it's like Dennis Adams, so we did get that comment. I think we're ready for a vote on this one. Oh, go ahead.
Thanks, Chair Wall. Did I hear that right? That one of the auctions was more than our license revenue?
You did.
Something, can you say that again?
Certainly. For the A&H program, we receive $4 on each hunting license that comes into the program. This biennium was the first time in which the license contribution to the A&H program was exceeded by raffle and auction sales.
Pretty amazing, isn't
So
it?
the two combined, raffle and auction exceeded the $4. Okay, got it. That makes sense.
Yep, that is correct.
Other questions? If not, is there a...
Well, just another, I attended one of the meetings where, and I think Director Colbert was there, but the deer and elk tag, 2016 it was 377, and 2025 it was $1,045,000. That is, this blows my mind that somebody's willing to pay $1 million for a tag. No, that's just a comment. Thank you.
Yes. Are we ready for a thank you motion?
I can just, I move to approve the 2026 auction and raffle big game tag allocations as proposed by staff and the A&H board and as shown in attachments 2 and 3.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the 2026 auction and raffle big game tag allocations as just read into the record. Could we do a voice vote? Michelle?
Labhart,
Yes.
Spellbrink,
Yes.
King,
Yes.
Hall DeFreeze,
Yes.
Wall.
Yes.
Commissioner Labhart has had to leave the meeting for her other engagement.
Yes.
Hatfield Hyde, I'm
It's
sorry.
unanimous. You meant Commissioner Hack.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
She's off the phone. Yeah. Let's move then to Exhibit G. You're just going to stay with us on Bernadette. Do you like?
Chair Wall, I'll just
introduction?
immediately turn it to Travis since you've already been in past.
Thank you. Members of the commission, for the record, I am Travis Schultz, the Access and Habitat Coordinator. Today, I have 2 board recommended projects before you today. Next slide, please. Thank you. The New River Access Project near Port Orford provides hunter access to Aleutian geese and assists landowners addressing damage from the geese on their properties. It is the only access area we have that's overlooking the Pacific Ocean and is the only opportunity for Aleutian geese in Oregon. The Jackson Cooperative TMA near Medford, excuse me, is increased its acreage by 13,000 from last year. The road closures that it provides help protect winter range for deer and elk, as well as improve the overall area for hunting. Staff recommend approving both the board recommended projects. With that, I can answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Travis. Go ahead.
I think I'm understanding. So the raffle tag allocations fund the access and habitat. I mean, that's the point, right? That's why we're doing it back to back. But thanks.
That's my understanding, but go ahead, Bernadette.
Chair Wall, Commissioner King, a portion of the Access and Habitat program is funded by the auction and raffle tags, and the other part comes from the $4 from each license.
Thank you. Thanks for explaining.
So I just wanted for the record that the review committee was 6-0 on both of them. So I wanted to make sure that that got on the record because I rely a lot on the review of these projects from the board, the Access Habitat Board.
Good point. I want to make two quick comments. One is I'm going to recuse myself on the vote because I have a distant relative that's one of the owners. I also want to make a quick comment that on one of these ranches, I got to see what the geese that do land on it, which is why it's in here. And it's not a huge ranch, but there were between 50 and 100,000 geese on there it wasn't for very long, but that, it's a lot of little mouths. Anyway, interesting comment. Let's go to a vote.
Yeah, I move to approve the two projects recommended for funding by the Access and Habitat Board.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the two projects recommended for funding by the Access and Habitat Board. Michelle, will you do the call?
Yes.
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 Recuse. Thank you. It passes 4-1. Then we will move to, thank you, Travis and Bernadette. We will move to Exhibit H, the OCRF connectivity project funding. Go ahead, Sarah.
Yes, one more time. Sarah Reif, currently, let's put my Habitat Division Administrator hat on for this one. Chair Wall and members of the Commission, Director Colbert, this is Exhibit H. This is the Oregon Conservation and Recreation Fund Wildlife Connectivity Project funding that you're being asked to approve a couple of projects, expenditures for a couple of projects. And with us, we have Reva Gilman, our OCRF Grant Coordinator. And I'm just going to hand it right over to Reva.
Perfect.
Thank you, Sarah. Good afternoon, Chair Wall, Vice Chair Hatfield-Hyde, Director Colbert, and members of the Commission. Thank you today. I hope everyone can hear me okay. Thanks for the time to speak on behalf of the Oregon Conservation and Recreation Fund, or OCRF. As Sarah mentioned, I'm Reva Gilman, the OCRF Coordinator. Today, the Advisory Committee is seeking Commission's approval to fund two wildlife passage projects from the OCRF Wildlife Connectivity Funds. Next slide, please. So in 2023, the state legislature passed its end of session Christmas tree bill, House Bill 5030, which included allocation of $5 million in lottery bond revenue to be passed to the Oregon Conservation and Recreation Fund for construction or significant improvement of wildlife passage infrastructure to support wildlife mobility and habitat connectivity within priority corridors. In November of last year, the OCRF requested letters of interest for the wildlife crossing infrastructure grant opportunity. Of the 8 letters submitted, 2 wildlife crossing projects were invited to submit a full application to the OCRF. ODFW staff technical review and the OCRF advisory committee members confirmed that the proposed projects meet the wildlife crossing lottery revenue bond project criteria, which is attachment 3 in your packets. So now I'm just going to go into a little more depth on the restrictions associated with these lottery revenue bonds. So next slide, please. So these funding requirements, lottery bond revenue has some significant limitations. First, the funds must be used to meet the legislative intent of the bill to support wildlife mobility and habitat connectivity. Second, and most importantly, the funds must result in construction or significant improvement of a capitalizable asset, such as a bridge, culvert, or tunnel. This means that funds can't primarily be used for something like habitat restoration, fencing removal, or other activities that would support wildlife mobility. Funds have to be used for construction or improvement of physical infrastructure. Further, this means these funds can't be used to support standalone efforts for things like feasibility studies, site selection, design, or engineering. These expenses are allowed as part of a larger construction effort, but the applicant has to demonstrate that construction will occur and that sufficient funding is available to do so. No indirect charges are permitted within the grantees program. The funds can't be used for any research, monitoring, or maintenance activities. And all lottery bond revenue must be spent within 36 months of the bond sale. The bond sale was just completed in early May this year, which means that awardees must spend funds before the end of April 2028. Beyond the restrictions on lottery bond revenue, ODFW also has goals to ensure that funded projects implement priorities outlined in our state wildlife action plan and help improve climate resilience for wildlife. Next slide, please. In evaluating projects, we of course must first identify efforts that meet those requirements I just went over of the lottery bond revenue. Beyond that, however, we're looking for efforts that improve wildlife passage for a diversity of taxa. Wherever possible, we'd like to emphasize non-game and smaller bodied species. The vast majority of the limited funding available to address road impacts on wildlife is focused on larger bodied species like deer and elk, where collisions pose a threat to motorist safety. We hope to apply this lottery bond revenue more broadly and support projects that improve passage for non-game species, particularly species of greatest conservation need as identified in our state wildlife action plan. Finally, to meet legislative intent, we'll be looking to implement projects in areas that fall within or immediately adjacent to ODFW's priority wildlife connectivity areas. Mitigation work completed in these areas are expected to be disproportionately valuable to wildlife connectivity and mobility, increasing climate resilience for wildlife by reducing barriers to movement and allowing wildlife to move more freely in order to adapt to changing climate conditions. For this first request for letters of interest, we received 8 applications. As part of the overall process, subject matter expert staff reviewed all proposals to ensure they met all criteria, both the lottery bond revenue restrictions and ODFW's broader goals. We identified 2 applications that met all of these criteria. Next slide, please. The first is a project headed by U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service at Cackler Marsh, located within Basket Slough National Wildlife Refuge, and will replace an existing undersized culvert with a 60-foot bridge, opening up passage for a diversity of fish and wildlife species under one of Basket Slough's main access roads. This bridge installation is part of a larger effort to restore native floodplain dynamics within Basket Slough and is expected to benefit species such as beaver and northwestern pond turtle. The second project is an effort by Oregon Wildlife Foundation, and Southern Oregon Wildlife Crossing Coalition to significantly improve wildlife passage under I-5 at the Mount Ashland exit. This project will construct a retaining wall that will provide a flat pathway or bench for wildlife under the bridge away from the roadway. Native vegetation planted alongside the bench will help obscure the view of passing traffic, as well as dampen noise, light, and sound to encourage wildlife to cross under the bridge. Black-tailed deer will benefit from this effort, and the group hopes that modifications may also increase the diversity of species that pass at this site. Next slide, please. This was our first solicitation and resulted in the recommended projects before you. The OCRF has also released a second request for letters of interest and will be reviewing submitted letters this summer. So the program plans to award remaining wildlife crossing lottery bonds to the most impactful projects that meet the restrictions of the funding and address ODFW goals for habitat connectivity. Staff recommendation is to approve the selected projects totaling $574,500 as recommended by the Conservation and Recreation Advisory Committee. With the funding of these projects, OCRF hopes to support improvements to wildlife passage and habitat connectivity in Oregon. I'd like to thank all of you for your time, and of course the OCRF Advisory Committee and chairs for their continued dedication to the program. And with that, happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Reva. We have two questions already. I think that you were first, I think. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Wall. Thanks for the presentation. My question is, I don't think it's the same. I'm not sure if it's related. Here's the question. The big wildlife crossing, what was it, 10 million that was down I-5? That was the bridge that went over? But it's in this same area. So I'm wondering, is this somehow related to that project? Meaning this one here with the underpass with the deer?
Thank you for the question, Commissioner King. Are you referring to, I think it's called the Mariposa crossing on I-5? Is that the?
Reva, she is, and we're going to phone a friend here and have our wildlife division administrator.
Yeah, say like we need Rachel Weaver, somebody. Thank you.
Chair Wall, Commissioner King, they're not related. It's the same, the Southern Oregon Wildlife Crossing Coalition is leading both of the projects, but they're not related. So that the Mariposa Crossing project was a proposal to the Wildlife Crossings Pilot Program through the Federal Department of Transportation that was awarded to ODOT. I think the request was $33 million that they were awarded. They've recently done a value engineering study to look at options, and actually the cost is going to end up being much less, which is good. But yeah, that project is moving forward, but not related to this particular.
Okay, yeah, because the last I heard it was granted, but then like one of the executive orders took it away or something. It's hard to keep track.
Chair Wall, Commissioner King, there was a delay, but they have recently gotten to move forward with it.
Okay, and this one is different.
This is different.
But is it in the same geographic area? They're nearby? Like, why are there two? That's what I'm trying to figure out what's happening.
Commissioner King, the Mariposa crossing is a full spanning crossing over I-5. This is just improving one of the exits over I-5. I'm not sure the distance between the two, but kind of two separate geographic locations.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Labhart.
Just to comment, the OCRF Advisory Committee takes their job very seriously. They're all volunteers. There's a technical review by staff, and then the OCRF Advisory Committee does their due diligence on these projects. So I just want to give them a shout out, and then also a particular shout out to Reva. She does a really good job of care and feeding of the OCRF Advisory Committee. So,
is there perhaps both of you still have your tag up? Did you want to say anything else, or is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I move to approve the two projects recommended for funding. Excuse me, wrong one. I move to approve expenditures from the Oregon Conservation and Recreation Fund up to $574,500 for two projects: adaptive plan to improve wildlife passage under I-5 and the Cackler Marsh Aquatic Passage Restoration Project.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to approve expenditure from the OCRF of up to $574,500 for 2 projects, as was just read into the record. Could we do a voice vote?
Hall DeFreeze,
Yes.
King,
Yes.
Spellbrink.
Yes.
Laphart,
Yes.
Wall.
Yes, unanimous. And thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Reba.
Thank you.
And we will move on to Exhibit I, which is Marty Olson talking to us about restoration and enhancement. Thank you for lasting all day.
Good afternoon, Chair Wall, Vice Chair Hatfield Hyde, members of the commission, Director Colbert. It's good to see you all today. Thank you for holding tight till the bitter end with me here. For the record, my name is Marty Olson. I'm the R&E and STEP Program Coordinator for Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. Next slide, please. Let's see, I guess I have the thing here. There we go. So I'm here today in front of the commission seeking the approval for the R&E project set forth in attachment 2 of Exhibit I. These 7 projects plus the R&E administration and operations package were approved, or I'm sorry, I misspoke, were recommended for funding by the R&E board at their spring meeting. The total amount recommended by the R&E board for all the projects plus the administration and operations part is $2,269,949, so just shy of $2.27 million. I prepared a draft motion for your consideration, and if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer those now. And this should bring up there we go. There's a draft motion.
Marty, I do have one quick question. The habitat projects are such a small part of this. Is there a chance that that would shift over time, or is this kind of it's 8,000 compared to 489 or 399 for the others? And just curious where habitat fits in this.
Chair Wall, thank you for the question. And certainly habitat is an eligible category for R&E expenses or R&E project approval. We see a lot of hatchery restoration projects come in. We see a lot of fishing access improvement projects. Habitat is certainly a key component of fisheries enhancement. We don't see a whole lot of access related, or I'm sorry, of habitat related projects coming in, but it is certainly something that we do get once in a while. It's just not the bulk of our projects coming in. So I think we'll see it fluctuate up and down from cycle to cycle, but I guess I don't have a solid answer saying that it will increase or that it will decrease or anything like that. So,
okay, maybe more on that later.
Yeah.
Other questions, comments, thoughts, or we do have one person for testimony. So we are online, David Moskowitz, and David, you'll have 3 minutes if you will, and go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Chair Wall, members of the commission, David Moskowitz, calling from Portland, and appreciate the virtual opportunity to testify. As a member of the group that was working on the Oregon Hatchery Resilience and Assessment during 2024, I started looking into some of the R&E programs because we were really searching around for specific ways to fund the deferred maintenance hatcheries. And R&E is always, it's sort of, when you think of R&E, you think of, it funds, access programs and hatchery programs. So I took a little dive into it, and the words restoration and enhancement are not defined in the statute, but there is a list of included activities or actions that fit either within restoration or enhancement. And some of them actually end up being on both sides of the ledger. Some activities like fishways can be addressed by restoration or they can be addressed by enhancement. Same with hatcheries. But the mix, it's not particularly distinguishable. And what the statute says, 496, 289, sub 6, sub A, says that the board will pick projects that achieve a balance between restoration and enhancement activities or projects. So I took a look at some of the legislative reports. Every biennium, ODFW has to report to the legislature. So there's reports going back quite a ways. It was hard to actually survey all of them because some of the earlier reports didn't necessarily quantify the investments that were made in particular activities. But we were pretty much able to look at the past 6 biennium and look at how reasonable is this balance between restoration and enhancement? Where are the things really, where's the money going to? And that goes to angler access. There's hatchery repair, and then there's hatchery technology. So it's both in enhancement and restoration. It's in passage and screening, both fixing existing passage and screening or putting in new. And they're in 2 different categories. Habitat is an enhancement. Research and monitoring is in enhancement. Education is an enhancement. Then there's liberation, which is a restoration activity. And then there's the administration. And looking at the past 6 biennia, enhancement projects took up an average of 61% of all the funding awarded, while restoration averaged about 23% of all the funding. And admin was generally around 14%. And so I guess those numbers, when I look at them, they give me some reason for concern about what projects are being funded. And I think your question, Chair Wall, is a perfect example of that. The other thing is thinking about the admin costs. And now for the nonprofit world, where most of my experience has been over the years, is that if you were spending more than 10% on sort of overhead, and admin and overhead are not necessarily completely the same thing, but you were aiming to be at 10% or less. So 14% seems a little high. And I think this number is high because the most recent the 2021-2023 biennium report showed that the admin costs for R&E were 22% of the total funds that were used.
Dave, if you could wrap it up.
Yeah.
Over your time.
I know the Beavers game is going to start. It looks like the first pitch has already happened. So I know I'm standing between that and watching that game. I think I'll put some of this in writing to you, but I have concerns about some of the decisions that were made for these projects that you're considering right now. For instance, the aerators at the pond. It seems like that kind of goes against the agency's climate change stuff. But I really think my main point is, I think this program needs some review. I think we need to look at the statutes and look at the practices and really think about how does R&E fit with this really crucial need for investing in the hatchery infrastructure for the state. And as you noted, for habitat. We're cutting positions in research and monitoring right now in Salem, and it's about 12% of R&E money goes to R&M. And if this is going to backfill on this kind of stuff, it really should happen. It should happen now. And I really appreciate the time. Sorry to go over. Thank you for the opportunity, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
I don't see any questions, so thank you for your testimony, and I'll look to the commissioners for any questions or Commissioner DeFries.
I would just say that I appreciate those comments, and I also appreciate kind of what's coming in and what's being funded, and then I would just say, as somebody who's also in the nonprofit world, federal de minimis rates were just raised to 15%, so administration costs it's tough to get that 10%. So I also appreciate that you are at 14%, which is still at this point federally recognized as what it would be about.
I'll look for a motion. Thank you for your comments.
I can read it, sure. I move to approve the projects recommended by the Restoration and Enhancement Board as set forth in attachment 2.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the projects recommended by the Restoration and Enhancement Board as just read into the record. Could we have a voice vote?
Labhart,
Yes.
Spellbrink,
Yeah.
King,
Yes.
Hall DeFreeze,
Yes.
Wall.
Yes, unanimous, and we are adjourned with great thanks to
Thank you.
all of you here who lasted the whole day. Thank you, thank you.
Everybody.